Let's do the math. Over the course of your life, you spent roughly 15,000 hours in a classroom. In that time, you learned that the mitochondria is the powerhouse of the cell. You memorized that in a right-angled triangle, the square of the hypotenuse is equal to the sum of the squares of the other two sides. You might even remember the exact year the Civil War began. But let me ask you one question. When was the last time you used the Pythagorean theorem to solve a real-life problem? Now, a different question. When was the last time you stressed about money? This is the greatest irony of modern life. We graduate from school knowing how to dissect a frog, but we have absolutely no idea how to file a tax return. We can solve for x in an algebraic equation, but we can't read the terms of a mortgage contract without getting lost in the jargon. We are taught chemistry, but no one explains the chemistry of compound interest. I am an investment banker. I make a living watching money flow from the pockets of those who don't know the rules into the pockets of those who created them. And I am here to tell you the truth. This is not an accident. The system isn't broken. It is working exactly as it was designed to. There are two types of education. The first is professional education. This is what schools and universities teach. The goal is simple: to turn you into a good employee. A doctor, an engineer, a manager, someone who knows how to work for money. The second is financial education. This teaches you how to make money work for you. And in the standard U.S. curriculum, the time dedicated to this is exactly 0 hours. Here is proof of the insanity of this system. Imagine you are 18 years old. You walk into a bank and ask for a $10,000 loan to start a small business. The manager would look at you, laugh, and probably call security. You are nobody. You have no collateral, no credit history, no assets. You are too big of a risk. But on that very same day, you walk into a college financial aid office. And the system, without a second thought, saddles you with $100,000 of student debt. A loan that you cannot even get rid of through bankruptcy. They give you a mortgage on your brain without ever checking if you'll be able to pay it back. You are sent into a financial war armed with a plastic knife. And when you inevitably get wounded, society tells you that you just didn't try hard enough. Today, we are going to fix this. Consider this the class your entire school skipped. We are going to break down budgeting, credit, investing, and taxes. No fluff, no complicated jargon. But to understand how to climb out of this hole, you first need to understand who dug it, and why it is actually not in the school's interest for you to be rich. To understand the present, we have to go back to the past. Roughly to the 18th century, look at a modern classroom. Rows of desks lined up perfectly. The teacher stands at the front like an overseer. Everything operates by the bell. The bell rings, you start work. The bell rings, you stop. To go to the bathroom, you have to raise your hand and ask for permission. You are told, don't talk, sit still. Do what you're told and repeat after me. Now look at a photograph of a textile factory from the early 20th century. See the resemblance? That is not a coincidence. The modern education system used in the U.S. is based on the so-called Prussian Model. At the time, Prussia needed two things: obedient soldiers who wouldn't ask questions in the trenches, and obedient workers for their growing industries. They didn't need philosophers or independent thinkers. They needed people who could follow instructions. When this model migrated to America during the Industrial Revolution, it was heavily supported by the biggest tycoons of the era. Men like Andrew Carnegie and John D. Rockefeller poured millions of dollars into creating a system of public education. It sounds like an act of charity, right? The great industrialists caring about the nation's literacy. But let's be real. There is a famous quote attributed to John D. Rockefeller that perfectly describes the philosophy of that time. I don't want a nation of thinkers, I want a nation of workers. Factory owners needed employees who could read just enough to understand the instructions on a machine and count just enough not to break the equipment. But they categorically did not need employees who understood how capital works, how profit is generated, or how to open their own factory. School was designed as an assembly line for producing employees. That is why school punishes you for making mistakes. In business and investing, making a mistake is the only way to learn something new. But on an assembly line, a mistake is a defect, it's a loss. So school drills a fear of failure into you. In school, collaboration during a test is called cheating. and is punished. In the real financial world, that is called partnership and delegation, and it is the key to wealth. School tells you, do it yourself. Rich people say, hire someone who can do it better. The system teaches you to be dependent. First, you depend on the teacher's grade, then on the boss's approval, and finally on the paycheck they hand you twice a month. You are being groomed for a world where money is something that is given to you in exchange for your time and obedience. You are not being groomed for a world where money can be created. The irony is that the economy has changed. The factories are gone. We live in the digital age. But our schools are still running on 19th century playbooks. We are trying to run the latest software on a computer powered by coal and steam. The result? We are churning out millions of people who are perfectly trained to be poor. They know how to work hard, but they have absolutely no understanding of the rules of the financial game. And that makes them the perfect prey. Because when you leave school with an employee mindset but zero financial literacy, you instantly walk into the first and most dangerous trap of the modern economy. A trap that masquerades as freedom. Remember the day that letter arrived. A thick envelope. Inside, a shiny plastic card with your name embossed in gold or silver letters. And the words, "Congratulations, you are pre-approved." In that moment, you feel a surge of pride. The bank trusts you. You are a real adult now. You can go out and buy that 65-inch TV or the new MacBook right now, even if your checking account is empty. It feels like magic, but it's not magic. It is neurobiology weaponized by banks. MRI studies show a terrifying thing. When you pay with cash, the pain centers in your brain, the same ones that react to physical pain, light up. Handing over paper money actually hurts. Your brain resists. But when you tap a credit card, nothing. Silence. No pain. You get the dopamine hit from the purchase, but you don't feel the pain of losing money. Banks have anesthetized the spending process so you spend more, and so you make a purchase. Let's say you spent $5,000 on furniture, clothes, and nights out. The interest rate on the card is the standard US 20 to 25%. But the bank is kind. They say, hey, don't worry. Just make the minimum payment. Only $100. Sounds great, right? You keep your cash, the bank is happy, everyone wins. But here's the math school didn't teach you. If you only make the minimum payment on a $5,000 debt at 20% interest, do you know how long it will take to pay it off? Over 20 years, and over those years you will pay the bank more than $10,000 just in interest. You bought one sofa, but you paid for 3. You literally sold your future time, your future hours of labor, for a piece of furniture that will fall apart before you finish paying for it. This is the modern form of indentured servitude. The shackles aren't made of iron anymore. They are digital. And as long as you have this debt, you cannot quit the job you hate. You cannot take risks. You have to grind to feed the beast. But the most brilliant part of the trap is how they made us proud of our chains. I'm talking about the credit score, the FICO score. In America, we are obsessed with these 3 digits. 700? Not bad. 800? Oh, you're elite. People brag about their credit score as a measure of financial success. Let me let you in on a secret that bankers don't say out loud. A FICO score is not a measure of your wealth. It is not a measure of how much money you have. A credit score is a measure of how good you are at being in debt. You can be a millionaire with $1 million in cash in the bank, but if you've never taken out a loan, your score might be 0. In the eyes of the system, you are unreliable. On the other hand, you can be drowning in debt, living paycheck to paycheck, but if you make your minimum payments on time, giving the bank the lion's share of your income, your score will be perfect. A high credit score means one thing. You are the perfect cash cow. Banks love you because you make them profit. You are their best asset. The system is built so that you never break even. All the marketing, all the cash back, and airline miles are created with one goal: to get you to carry a balance. Consumer debt is a fire in your house. It burns your money fast and bright, but even if you avoid credit cards, there is another enemy. It isn't as loud, it doesn't call you with threats. It operates quietly, invisibly, while you sleep. And right now, it is reaching into your pocket. You think your money is safe when it's sitting in your savings account at the bank? You take pride in saving for a rainy day? Let me tell you about the most insidious thief you've probably never thought about. It's not a robber in a mask. It's not an internet scammer. It is your own central bank. Its name is inflation. Inflation isn't just the price of gas or milk going up. Inflation is the slow, systematic devaluation of your currency. It means that the $100 you saved a year ago can buy less today than it could back then. Governments and central banks love inflation. Why? Because inflation is a hidden tax. It allows them to print more money without causing panic. They increase the money supply, and suddenly, your savings start to melt. Imagine you have a glass jar full of water. These are your savings. Now imagine someone slowly, drop by drop, adds a different liquid to that jar, like rubbing alcohol. After a while, you still have a full jar, but it's not the same water anymore. It's diluted. Its value has decreased. In the US, according to official data, the average annual inflation rate over the last 50 years has been about 3 to 4%. It seems like a small number, but let's look at what that means in practice. If inflation is 3% a year, your money loses about half of its purchasing power every 24 years. Half! The $10,000 you save today will only be able to buy $5,000 worth of goods and services in 24 years. And if inflation spikes to 5%, your money loses half its value in just 14 years. This is worse than any consumer loan. With a loan, you at least see it. You know how much you're paying. Inflation is a silent killer of your wealth. This is why people who just save money get poorer every year without even realizing it. Their capital isn't growing, it's slowly burning up. Financially literate people know money that isn't working is dying. But it's not just about inflation. There is another factor schools ignore: the difference between assets and liabilities. And understanding this is the key to creating real wealth. Do you think the house you live in is your biggest asset? Or the new car you bought on credit? You might be deeply mistaken. Rich people think differently. And that is exactly why they get richer while everyone else barely scrapes by. We need to understand where to direct our money, where to put it so that it doesn't just hold its value but grows, so that it brings you more money. Because if your money is just sitting there as dead weight while inflation eats it, and consumer debt suffocates you, what kind of financial freedom can we talk about? Fortunately, there is a centuries-old method to make time and money work for you. A method that Albert Einstein called the eighth wonder of the world. And it's not stock speculation. It's not risky startups. It is a simple yet incredibly powerful concept. Albert Einstein once called compound interest the eighth wonder of the world. He said, "He who understands it, earns it. He who doesn't, pays it." Most people spend their lives in the second category. They pay compound interest to banks on their credit cards. But today, we are going to switch sides. What is compound interest? It's a snowball. Imagine you are standing at the top of a snowy mountain. You pack a small snowball the size of your fist. That is your first invested $100. You push it down the slope. After one rotation, it picks up a little snow. Now it's slightly bigger. After a second rotation, it picks up snow on its new, larger surface area. The longer it rolls, the crazier the process becomes. A mile down, it's not a snowball anymore. It's an avalanche taking out trees. In finance, it works like this. Your money makes profit. And then that profit makes new profit. Let me show you the magic with a concrete example. This is the classic story of two people. Let's call them Jack and Jill. Jack is a smart guy. He started investing at 21. He wasn't rich, he just put aside $200 a month. He did this for exactly 9 years until his 30th birthday. Then he stopped putting money in. Completely. But he didn't withdraw it. He just left it to grow at an average of 8% per year. In total, Jack took $21,600 out of his own pocket. Jill is like most of us. At 20, she wanted to live life to the fullest. Travel, parties, a new car. She started thinking about the future only at 30. She saw Jack's example and started investing the same $200 a month. But she was persistent. She invested every month for 37 years until she turned 67. Jill took almost $90,000 out of her own pocket, 4 times more than Jack. Question: who will have more money for retirement? Logic suggests it should be Jill. She tried longer. She invested more. But math is cruel. At age 67, Jack will have approximately $2.5 million. Jill will have less than $2 million. Jack won by investing 4 times less money and doing absolutely nothing for most of his life. How? Because his money had the ultimate advantage: time. In investing, time is more important than the amount of money. This is the hardest lesson to understand. The human brain is not wired to think exponentially. We think linearly, 1 plus 1 equals 2. But compound interest is multiplication. Look at a compound interest chart. At first, it's a boring, almost flat line. 1 year, 2 years, 5 years, nothing happens. You save, you deny yourself that extra coffee, and the result seems laughable. This is the moment 90% of people quit. They say, "This doesn't work," and withdraw the money to buy a new iPhone. But if you wait out this valley of disappointment, the line suddenly shoots up. Vertically. In the final years, your capital can grow by an amount exceeding your annual salary, simply because the base has become so huge. Warren Buffett is one of the richest men on the planet. But did you know that 99% of his wealth was earned after his 50th birthday? He isn't the best investor in history in terms of percentage returns. He has simply been doing it longer than anyone else. He started at 11. If he had started at 30, you would never have heard his name. If you are watching this video and you are 20 years old, you possess an asset that billionaires do not have. You have time. Every $1,000 you invest now is worth 10 times more than the same 1,000 invested at age 40. If you are 30 or 40, don't panic. The best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. The second best time is today. But the cost of waiting grows every day. Waiting for the perfect moment or for the market to crash is suicide. While you wait, the magic of compound interest works against you through inflation, not for you. Now you understand the mechanism. The snowball needs to roll, but what should that snow consist of? Where exactly should you put those $200? If you buy the wrong things with them, no amount of compound interest will save you. We need to learn to distinguish between what makes you rich and what only pretends to be wealth. Let's play a game. I'll name an object, and you mentally answer. Does it make you richer or poorer? Your house, your car, your new iPhone, your collection of expensive watches. If you answered richer to any of those points, I have bad news for you. You've been scammed. You are confusing looking rich with being rich. And this confusion is the main reason the middle class in America is drowning in debt while trying to maintain a pretty picture. Business schools teach complex definitions of assets and liabilities. Balance sheets, amortization, debits, credits. Forget all that. There is only one definition that matters. It is crude but honest. An asset is something that puts money in your pocket. A liability is something that takes money out of your pocket. It's simple. If you lost your job today, would this object feed you or demand to be fed? Let's look at the American dream. The house with the white picket fence. Most people consider their home their biggest asset. Real estate always goes up, they say, but let's look at the numbers. Every month, the house demands a mortgage payment. It demands property tax, insurance, roof repairs, lawn mowing. If you live in it and you don't rent it out, it is not an asset. It is a liability. It is a giant hole you throw money into, hoping that in 30 years you can sell it for more. Maybe. Or maybe the market will crash like in 2008. And a car? That is a financial catastrophe. The second you drive off the lot, your brand new car loses 10 to 20% of its value. It will never bring you money unless you're a taxi driver. It requires gas, oil, tires, and insurance. It is a liability in its purest form. Look at your iPhone. You think it's an asset because it costs $1,000? No. It is a liability that makes Apple richer, not you. In 2 years, it will be worth pennies. Poor people spend money immediately. Get paid, then buy food and clothes. The middle class buys liabilities that they think are assets. They buy a bigger house, a pricier car, take a loan for a vacation, thinking, I deserve this. This raises my status. They increase their expenses, trapping themselves in the rat race. They have to run faster just to stay in the same place. Rich people do it differently. They don't buy liabilities. First, they buy assets, stocks that pay dividends, bonds, real estate that they rent out, businesses that run without them. intellectual property, and only then, when these assets start generating income, do the rich use that income to buy themselves a Porsche or a house by the ocean. They don't pay for luxury with their labor. Their assets pay for their luxury. Feel the difference. You want a new phone. You work for a week, take the money, and give it to Apple. The money is gone forever. A rich person wants a new phone. He takes the money and buys Apple stock. The dividends and stock growth pay for the phone a year later, but the stock remains his. And the next year it will buy him something else. The goose that lays the golden egg stays in the coop. Most people kill the goose, turn it into nuggets, eat them in one evening, and then wonder why they are hungry again. Your task is to become a collector of assets. Before spending $1, ask yourself, am I buying something that will make me poorer, or something that will work for me while I sleep? This changes everything. Instead of chasing sales at the mall, you start looking for sales on the stock market. But even if you've learned to distinguish assets from liabilities and started investing, there is one partner who is always waiting for his cut. He takes no risks, he invests not a single cent, but he always takes the first and fattest slice of your pie. If you don't know the rules of the game with him, you will be giving him more than half of what you earn without even realizing it. Grab your latest pay stub. Look at the top line, gross pay. Now look at the bottom line, net pay. The difference between those numbers probably makes you want to punch something. Federal tax, state tax, FICA, Social Security, Medicare. The government reaches into your pocket before you even get to touch your money. You work from January to May just for Uncle Sam. Most people fear the IRS like fire. They think the tax code is a book of punishments, a set of rules invented to take away what you honestly earned. But here is how the rich see it. The U.S. tax code is not a book of punishments. It is a book of incentives. The code is about 70,000 pages long. Only about 50 pages tell you how much tax you have to pay. The other 69,950 pages are instructions on how not to pay taxes legally. The government uses taxes as a carrot and stick. If you are an employee, W-2, you are of little use to the economy from the government's perspective. You don't create jobs, you just consume. So you get the stick, the highest tax rates. The life cycle of an employee looks like this: earn, then pay tax, and then spend what's left. But the government needs someone to build housing, start businesses, drill for oil, and provide jobs. The government doesn't know how to do this efficiently, so it asks private business to do it. And in exchange, it offers tax breaks. The life cycle of a business owner and investor looks different. Earn, spend on growth, investments, pay tax on what's left. Do you feel the difference? The rich spend money before paying taxes. Here is a famous example often cited by Warren Buffett. He, one of the richest men in the world, publicly admitted that his tax rate is lower than his secretary's. How is that possible? Is he breaking the law? No. The secretary gets a salary. That is earned income. It is taxed at the maximum bracket, reaching almost 40 to 50% in some states. Buffett gets money from investments. That is capital. The long-term capital gains tax in the U.S. is significantly lower, often 15% or 20%. The system is literally screaming at you, stop working for a paycheck, start investing. School doesn't teach you that opening a Roth IRA or 401k allows you to hide money from taxes today so it grows tax-free. School doesn't teach you the concept of depreciation in real estate. It is a phantom expense. Your house might be gaining value on the market, but on paper for the IRS, it is losing value. And the government lets you write off this loss against your taxes. You get richer, but pay less. It is legal magic. Don't get me wrong, I am not advocating for tax evasion. Evasion gets you jail time. I am talking about tax optimization. It is the duty of every financially literate person. Why leave a tip to a government that prints money out of thin air anyway? If you want to get rich, you have to change the source of your income. As long as your tax return only shows a W-2 form, you are easy prey. You are a goose being plucked, with them trying to keep the hissing to a minimum. But as soon as you start earning income from assets, dividends, rent, capital gains, you move into the untouchable caste. You become a partner to the state, so we've optimized taxes, we stopped buying liabilities, we have free cash. Where do we put it? Most beginners run to Wall Street thinking they will become the next Wolf of Wall Street. They start trading, buying, and selling stocks every day, and that is the fastest way to lose everything, because the stock market has its own myths, and the biggest one is that you need to be a genius to make money. In reality, to win in the stock market, you need to be boring, incredibly boring. When you hear the word investing, what do you picture? Leonardo DiCaprio in an expensive suit yelling into a phone? Charts flashing red and green? Guys sitting in front of 6 monitors trying to guess where the price of gold will go in the next second? Hollywood and financial news have led you to believe that the stock market is a casino. That success requires finding that one secret stock, the next Tesla or Amazon, while it costs $5 and selling it at the peak. I have news for you. That is not investing. That is speculation. That is gambling. And in that game, the cards are marked against you. You are trying to beat the market by competing against Goldman Sachs supercomputers that execute trades in nanoseconds, and against an army of analysts who know what the CEO of Apple had for breakfast. What are your chances? About the same as winning the lottery. But there is a secret that Wall Street hates, a secret that renders their services useless. You don't need to find the needle in the haystack. Just buy the whole haystack. This principle was invented by Jack Bogle, the founder of Vanguard. He created what is called an index fund. Instead of trying to guess which company will win, you buy a tiny piece of all the 500 largest companies in America at once. You buy the S&P 500 index. It is a bet on the entire U.S. economy. Apple, Microsoft, Google, Amazon, Exxon, they are all in there. Here is a statistic that blows your mind. Over the last 15 years, about 90% of highly paid professional fund managers lost to the ordinary S&P 500 index. Think about that. The best minds with Harvard degrees and access to insider info cannot beat a simple, dumb algorithm that just buys 500 companies and does nothing. Why? Because the market is smarter than any single individual. The S&P 500 is a self-cleaning mechanism. If a company performs poorly, it loses value and drops out of the index. If a new company grows, it gets added to the index. You don't need to follow the news. The index does all the work for you. It automatically gets rid of losers and adds winners. Historically, the American market grows by an average of 8 to 10% per year. There are bad years, there are crises where everything drops 30%. But if you just keep buying and don't sell in a panic, the market always recovers and goes higher. Always. Your strategy should be boring. Set up an automatic deduction from your paycheck. Buy an index fund like VOO or SPY every month on the same day. It doesn't matter if the market is up or down. If the market crashed, great, you're buying more shares at a discount. If it went up, great, your portfolio gained value. Investing is like watching paint dry or grass grow. If you're having fun, if you feel an adrenaline rush, you are probably losing money. Good investing should be boring. It should be the background of your life, not the meaning of it. You need to become an owner of the economy, not a gambler in a casino. But here is the problem. To invest in the S&P 500, you need spare cash. You need that surplus left over after paying bills. And this is where most people hit a wall. I have nothing to invest, they say. I live paycheck to paycheck. Usually the problem isn't how much you earn. The problem is that you have a leaky bucket. No matter how much water you pour in, it drains out. We need to fix your bucket. We need to talk about the word starting with B that everyone hates. Budget. But forget about complex Excel spreadsheets and collecting receipts. There is a simpler way. Let's be honest, the word budget sounds disgusting. It reeks of restriction. It reminds us of a diet where you can only eat celery and drink water. No one wants to live on a diet forever. And no one wants to count every penny forever. If school had taught this, they surely would have made you write down every coffee purchase in a thick notebook. It's boring, and it doesn't work. Willpower is a finite resource. Sooner or later, you will break. You don't need a strict regime. You need a system that works on autopilot. The simplest and most effective formula used by millionaires, even if they don't admit it, is called the 50-30-20 rule. Imagine that every dollar that lands in your hand is a soldier. Your job is to deploy them into 3 battalions. First battalion, 50% of your income. This is needs. This includes everything you physically cannot live and work without. Rent or mortgage, groceries, not restaurants, utilities, minimum debt payments, insurance, gas. If your needs exceed 50% of your income, you are living beyond your means. You need to either move to a smaller apartment or sell the expensive car. Period. Second battalion, 30% of income. This is wants. Yes, you are allowed to spend money. Life should be enjoyable. Netflix, Friday night dinner, new sneakers, vacations. Spend this 30% without guilt. This is your fuel for joy. Third battalion, 20% of income. This is freedom. This money is not for spending, ever. This is investments, paying down debt above the minimum, and your emergency fund. This is the money that buys your future. But here's where most people make a fatal mistake. They do it in the wrong order. The average person gets paid, pays for needs first, then spends on wants. And whatever is left at the end of the month goes into freedom. Guess how much is usually left? Zero. You need to flip the equation. The second your paycheck hits your account, 20% must disappear. Automatically. Set up an auto transfer at your bank. On payday, money flies into your investment or savings account on its own. You don't even see it. This is the principle of pay yourself first. The government takes taxes before you see the money. Do the same. Become the IRS for yourself. Enact a tax for the future. Why is this critical? Because of Parkinson's law. The law states expenses always rise to meet income. Remember when you got your first raise, you thought, now I'll be rich. But a year passed, you're earning more, yet you're still short on cash. Why? Because you moved to a better apartment, started buying pricier wine and tastier food. This is called lifestyle creep, and it is a trap. Automation saves you from yourself. If you don't see the money in your checking account, you learn to live on what remains. You adapt. Humans are amazingly adaptive. You won't even notice the difference in quality of life living on 80% of your income instead of 100%. But for your future, that difference will be colossal. Financial discipline isn't about denying yourself everything. It is about making decisions in advance. When you set up an automatic budget, you make one smart decision once, and it works for you for years. Now you have a full toolkit. We broke down how the education system groomed you to be a cog. We saw the traps of debt and inflation. We learned to distinguish assets from liabilities. We understood how to use taxes and compound interest, and we created an automatic money management system. There is one last question left. Why? Why do all this? For numbers on a screen? For a golden toilet? No. The true goal of financial literacy is much deeper. And if you don't understand this, you might get rich, but you'll remain a miserable slave. Many people think financial freedom is the ability to buy whatever you want. Yachts, private jets, islands. That is the pretty picture from Instagram they sell us to keep us running in the wheel. But true financial freedom looks different. It looks like a Monday morning where you wake up not because of an alarm, but because you are rested. It looks like the ability to say no to a boss demanding you work weekends because you aren't afraid of being fired. It looks like time spent with your kids while they are still kids, not after you retire and they've already grown up and moved away. Money is not the goal. Money is a tool, the most powerful tool in the world. If you don't have money, you don't own yourself. You belong to the bank you owe for the mortgage. You belong to the company that pays your salary. You belong to the government that can change the rules at any moment. When you live paycheck to paycheck, you are walking on the edge of a cliff. Any push, sickness, an accident, a crisis, and you fall. That is a life lived in constant fear. And fear is a bad advisor. Fear makes us make stupid decisions, settle for less, tolerate humiliation. School prepared you to be a replaceable part in someone else's machine. But now you know the truth. You know that education doesn't end with a diploma. In fact, your real education only begins today. Financial literacy is your armor. Savings are your shield. Investments are your sword. Imagine you walk into a dealership and see a car for $50,000. Before, you would have thought, can I afford the $800 monthly payment? Now you will think differently. You will calculate, to earn this $50,000 after taxes, I have to sit in the office for 2,000 hours. Is this piece of metal worth 2,000 hours of my life? Is it worth a year that I could have spent traveling or building my own business? When you start measuring the price of things not in dollars but in slices of your life, your consumption changes. You stop buying junk. You stop trying to impress people you don't even like. You start buying the most expensive thing in the world, freedom. The system doesn't like this. The economy is built on consumption. It needs you to be hungry, unsatisfied, and dependent. It needs you to take loans and work until you're 70. Becoming financially independent is the most rebellious act you can commit in the modern world. It won't happen overnight. It is a marathon, not a sprint. There will be moments when the market drops and you will be scared. There will be moments when friends invite you on an expensive vacation and you will have to say no. There will be moments of doubt. But remember Jack and Jill. Time works for you. Every dollar you saved and invested today is a little soldier that will fight for your freedom forever. Every asset you bought is a brick in the wall of your fortress. Start today. Not with $1 million. Start with $10. Open an account. Buy the index. Make a plan. Make it so that your future self 20 years from now looks back and says to you, "Thank you." See ya.